All right, a very good morning to you. It's good to see you. 7 minutes past the hour, but you stood in time for the show that is Your World. My name is Winnie Lubembe, and today we're tackling a very one of the most difficult conversations to have, and this is as far as grief is concerned. And today we're really focusing on coping with immense, or if you like, intense grief, all right? Because coping with the loss of someone or something you love is one of life's biggest challenges. And whether it is a close friend, a spouse, a partner, parent, child, or other relative, few things are as painful as losing someone that you love. And after such a significant loss, life may never seem quite the same again. So the big question is, how do you cope with the pain, come to terms with your grief, and eventually find a way to pick up the pieces and move on with your life? That is the biggest question that lingers in so many people's minds. And today will help and try as much as possible and dissect all that, and just finding, first of all, purpose and meaning. And this is after loss, an intense loss at that matter. So you want to stick around until the end of the show. If you have lost someone and probably you want to share your story and your journey, feel free to also interact with us at NTV Kenya, both on Facebook and on X, and tag me as well at Lubembe_Winnie. And you also want to share your story of how you were able to cope with the loss and were able to move on. Feel free to also share your story as well, so that we can encourage as many people out there as we can. So to help us with this conversation this morning, I am joined by, on my immediate left, we have Rose Gishure, who is a founder and host, Grief Angels podcast. Good to have you this morning.
Thank you.
You look really lovely.
I try.
You look so beautiful.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
And thank you really for, first of all, agreeing to come and speak with us as well on your journey. And like I said, difficult conversation to have, but we'll find a way, right? We'll find a way. Yeah. All right. And we'll also have Josephine Kiluta, who is a grief recovery specialist and a counselor as well. Good to have you this morning. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm very well, thank you.
And you look lovely as well. I really like the brooch. You should have told me. I should also have someone. Something over here. But it's good to have you as well. Thank you so much for making the time. But let's just start with you, Josephine. Understanding grief. And I know this is something that we have tried and tried and tried over time to understand, but it gets more complicated by the day to really understand what exactly is grief. Because a lot of people would say there's this way, that you're supposed to grieve, and other people would think that there's also this other way to grieve. So can you just help us understand the basics?
Okay, thank you very much, Winnie, first of all, for having me in your show.
You're welcome.
For grief is normally a normal and natural reaction to loss.
Okay.
Any kind of loss causes grief. Why do we suffer grief? Because grief is emotional. Yeah. And we get emotionally attached to people, we get emotionally attached to things, and when we lose them, there is a pain that we feel, and that is what we call grief.
Yeah.
So it's a normal and a natural reaction to loss.
Okay. Yeah, when you talk about reaction, like I said earlier on, I think that is where there's usually a very big problem, and that is reaction. Because again, like I said, a lot of people would expect someone to react a certain way for them to think that they are actually grieving. And when that doesn't happen, then people will start judging you and say, yeah, but this one is not grieving. This one did not love this person or this thing much more, because we're not seeing anything. We're not seeing any emotion. So I think the biggest question, or what I'm trying to ask is there a right or wrong way of grieving? And what exactly do those emotions look like?
Of course, there is no right or wrong way to grieve, because we are all related differently.
Okay.
And because of socialization, sometimes there are people who will be very, will show grief, with a lot of extrovert reactions.
Okay.
And others will just swallow it because we fear, or they fear being thought weak, because of the way we are socialized. So whichever way we choose to we grieve will be determined so much, first of all, by our relationship to the object of loss, and secondly, the way we are socialized. Yeah.
I see that. I see that. And Rose, again, for you, lost both parents, and you also lost two of your brothers as well. And before we get into your story, over time, I mean, it's one day at a time, right?
1 second at a time.
1 second at a time. 1 second at a time. Have you, like, looking back, have you sort of like understood grief?
I'm trying to, or I'm beginning to,
Yeah.
and that's part of what led me to this work.
Yeah.
I was gonna just thought about something when Josephine was speaking. She said about the reactions.
Yeah.
How I see grief, and I think a lot of people see it this way. It's all the love that you had for that person that has nowhere to go, because you loved this person for a very long time. Then now they have gone forever. So where do you take that love?
Yeah.
So that love then turns into grief, and that's what it becomes. So for me, at least growing up in my generation, and I know we're from different generations, with Josephine, our society doesn't teach you about grief. Yeah. Grief remains.
We don't
such
talk
a
about
taboo.
it. I mean, it's
we
taboo,
don't talk about grief.
you know.
We don't talk about sex. We don't
Yeah.
talk about how to handle money.
No.
So nobody taught us those things.
Yeah.
So as we grow up and become young adults, you're supposed to figure it out yourself.
Yeah.
So, and that's why people make mistakes with even things like money or things like sex. But when it comes to grief also, at no point did your parents sit you down to tell you, because even as our society, our African society especially, we try to move on quickly. If there's a way of moving, like forget, don't talk about the dead, let them be. Hiyo ni mambo ya Mungu is what we say, and we just move on. And but your life has been shattered completely. The person you loved the most, your mother, is no longer there. Your brother is no longer there. So what are you supposed to do? You seek out your parents. They're also grieving. For example, if I've lost my brother, they've also lost a child. So we are not in a position to help each other, because they are also going through their own grief. So for me, how I got into this grief work is, yes, from my own personal experience, but also from seeing those gaps in society, that there are no spaces or tools or resources to help you with. And also therapy is also not heavily widely accepted in our African society. At least now it might be getting better.
Yeah, people are talking about it.
But before it wasn't like that.
Back then.
So I really wanted to create a space, especially for young people, to come and find companionship, community. You're not the only one going through this. There are others. So that's how I got myself into this world. Support is what you need.
I see that. All right. So can we go back to that moment where you lost your parents?
Yeah. So it started off with my dad when I was 13 years old. He had leukemia. It's 2002.
Okay.
And he died then. Then my mom, of course, things happen. You have to change things, family dynamics. She changed her job. She has to become the sole breadwinner now. She's raising 4 kids on her own. Then somewhere down the line, maybe a couple of years later, I think another 9 years, my younger brother, who's just 2 years behind me, also got cancer.
I'm sorry.
He was young, he was 20 years old. We tried everything we could, went to India, did everything we could. But then he also died. Cancer can be very, very aggressive sometimes. And I know we've made tremendous efforts nowadays with cancer, but it still is a big monster. And then I think that those 2 losses for that woman, the woman is my mother, did something to her, which is now for me now as a young woman myself with my own family, beginning to look at my mother in that state where you've lost your husband and you've lost your child. It does something to you. So of course, but emotionally, mentally, even physically, it affected her. So she also developed complications of high blood pressure, diabetes, kidney failure, and then she eventually died.
I'm sorry.
So then, thank you. So then, what I'm beginning to do now, that is when I began to say, no, something has to first and foremost stop and or give. Trying to understand how grief changes us as individuals. There's physical effects of grief. I'm sure Josephine knows about it. What grief does to you physically. What grief does to the family setting itself, how it changes relationships.
Yeah.
You lose for many people that I've seen now, you lose a parent, whether it's both or one, if it is a single parent. The sibling dynamic also changes because you're also grieving the same person, but you're grieving differently because, like Josephine said, each relationship is very unique. I am the second-born child for my mother. When she died, I was grieving her as a second-born child, as a first daughter. My sister, the last-born, is grieving as a last-born. It's a very different relationship, but you find a way to get to it with the right support.
I see that. And like you said, and I really like what you said, that grief does something to you as a person. And you spoke about your mom and how losing her husband and losing her child, what again that did to her. But I'm curious to see and to understand, how did that do to you? To me. As an individual, But before you answer that, Josephine, just to pick up from what Rose has said, and the physical manifestations of the same, because it's intense emotional feeling that sometimes you don't even understand. You can't explain the level of pain, you know, from losing someone. But can we just talk about what really grief does to us, you know, as a people? And this is, you know, mentally, physically, emotionally as well.
Yeah, well, the first reaction when you are faced with loss is that, first of all, you go into shock.
Yes.
And you are finding it hard to believe. And then as the time goes by, you also start wondering whether there was something that you could have done to help, to prevent. And a lot of people suffer a feeling of guilt. They feel like if I was there, or if I had done this, or if I had taken them to a better hospital, they would have been you know, saved. But really, that feeling of guilt is not usually justified, because for you to be guilty of something, you need to have planned it and executed it willingly. Then we can say you are guilty. So when you start feeling guilty, and you know you didn't plan it, you didn't execute it, then you are not being fair to yourself. So that feeling of guilt is quite, I've encountered a lot of people feeling very guilty. I talked to another couple, I was counseling another couple, and the man was in tears because he was saying they had lost a baby at birth. And the man was saying, if I had driven faster, if I had driven faster to the hospital, perhaps I would have saved the child. And he was in tears, and that he was feeling guilty. So this is not the right way to feel, although there's no wrong way to feel, but you are not being fair to yourself when you are burdening yourself with the word guilt. Because these are circumstances that you had nothing to do with, or you could not have controlled. The other thing that people feel is anger. They are angry. They can get angry at anyone for for no provocation at all. I've seen people quarrel during funerals, sibling fighting. And a lot of anger. This is a normal reaction to loss. You get angry, others get angry at God. They say, God, how could you let this happen to me, or why? Okay, when you talk of talking to God like this, it's not bad to ask God why. Because I do believe that He will give you an answer eventually, not maybe immediately.
Not immediately,
but even the answer is there. He said, you shall surely die. So now why are we asking God, why did you do it? Because He had already said it will happen. But as Rose says, we are not prepared for that moment when it happens. So asking God question is okay. Questioning God, that is where a lot of believers find it's a bit difficult because he said we shall.
And we're told that. We're told do not question God, you know, and all those things. But you see, at that particular time, that is not what you want to hear, you know, because you're angry and you want to sort of like express and channel your anger in a certain way. That, again, like we said when we started the show, there's no right or wrong way to, you know, express these emotions that we're feeling. Something else from Rose's story is a lot of people would say, you know, long-term illnesses, for example, you know, 2 instances of cancer from your dad and your brother, and then your mom as well, with kidney failure and hypertension and all those things. So sometimes some people would say it's sort of like expected, you plan for it, and you sort of like start preparing for the same. But is that really the case, that you're prepared for that? Like, do you ever really get prepared for that? Just feeling. Then I'll come to hear what Rose has to say.
No one, even those who have had terminally sick people for a long time, they always hope that they will get better. And that is the dream of everyone, nursing a terminally sick person. So when it happens, it's like they feel betrayed. They feel, oh, this is not the way I expected things to happen. And therefore, it's a shock to them. And they say, we prayed, we fasted, we did what, we took them to the best hospitals. Why did it happen? So it's always a shock. It's always a shock. And as I said earlier, that emotional type, because grief is emotional. It's not here in the mind, it is here in the emotion. It's in your heart. And therefore, when that severing happens, you must bleed. But the problem is when now the bleeding is not allowed to take place. And because when it is not allowed to take place, then it takes a long while before one can really come to terms with it. And that is what now takes us to our topic today, the immense, the complicated grief. Complicated in the sense that you have been having that pain for a long time and doesn't seem to be going
away.
And therefore one needs to be aware of some of the reactions that can happen over time. Because a lot of people find it difficult to sleep, and they may resort into taking sleeping pills. These are some of the short-term energy relieving behaviors that one should always watch out for. Like if you find now you are eventually addicted to taking, you can't sleep without a pill, now you are moving towards now the complicated grief side. Or when you find you cannot cope, you find you wake up in the morning and it's the same thing, things are very difficult to do, you lack energy. Some people also cut themselves off from society, and they don't want to associate themselves with people. They lock themselves up, they just cut off. That emotional cut off from society is a symptom of complicated grief. Yes.
All right. I really wanted to hear what you have to say, especially that question on, you know, are you ever prepared for the same? But also remember the question that I asked earlier on, and that is what exactly these 3 different scenarios that is losing the people that you love the most.
What does it do
to you? All right. So can we do that after the break? Because I do not want to rush you. Be like, in a minute, answer all this in a minute. But yes, let's take that break. The topic of conversation today is coping with immense or intense grief. There's so much to discuss on the other side of the break. But again, like I said, if you have any to share with us as well, so that we can encourage as many people out there, feel free to share with them, share with us on our socials at NTV Kenya, both on Facebook and on X, and tag me as well at Lubembe_Winnie. I'll be looking at all that after the break. Stay with us. This is Your World.
your base, they are the best local entertainment. Baby!
Tumefungulia Magic. Starting from the 7th of October, Maisha Magic Plus will be on DSTV Access and GoTV Plus.
NTV inavuka tena misitu na nyika, milima na mabonde. Safari hii ni kaunti nambari 25. Safari yako kwenda Samburu. From the wildlife conservancies in the east to the infamous Suguta Valley to the north.
Karibuni NTV Samburu County.
And you get to experience the only international camel derby in the region.
Samburu culture is the best in the world. Come, we celebrate our culture.
Tutatua kupakua uhondo, mila na tamaduni zake.
Margaret Kimathi, Ruth Sarmui,
Sydney Chazima, Samburu County Camel Derby Edition. Na jarida la ngamia. This weekend on the 6th, 7th and 8th. Only on NTV.
Who's there?
This one is for me. You need to leave. Here, take the money and get out of here.
Where are you going to take us? Am I supposed to be saying something? Vasil, we're still all right.
Who is it?
It's Vasil and Maxime. Wait here.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God, no. Look at all these cats.
Following the gazettement of Two Rivers as a private, services-focused special economic zone, the first one of the kind in Kenya, there is no better time to own a home at Two Rivers than now. Text the word Cascadia to 22365.
All right, welcome back. 30 minutes past the hour. Time really flies. There's so much that we need to cover as far as today's conversation, and that is coping with immense or intense grief. And to help us with that conversation this morning, we have Rose Gishure, who is the founder and host, Grief Angels podcast, as well as Josephine Kiluta, who is a grief recovery specialist, as well as a counselor, really helping us understand, grief. And what happens and manifestations of the same. But the biggest question that a lot of people would ask is, how do I cope? How do I move forward? And first of all, is it possible to move forward with life? And Rose, before we went on a break, 2 questions for you. So number one, preparedness. Right? Where, like we said, a lot of people would think, yeah, but you sort of eventually this is what is coming. Yeah. But are you ever really prepared for the same?
I don't think you're ever prepared. Yeah. And I mean, Josephine did say that the Bible does say we will all die, which is what we expect, but we don't expect it to happen today.
Yes.
We think it's going to happen in the long-term future. A future that's never coming. Yeah. But even with terminal illnesses, I ran support groups, and one of the support groups I ran for parental loss is a lady whose mom prepared even to the T what kind of coffin she wants. Because it was cancer, they knew it was coming. They didn't know when, but it was coming soon. So she prepared her, this is what you do with the property, this is what you do on the day, this is who you call. So everything is prepared, but back to what Josephine said, it ultimately is hope, because at the back of it all, there's such hope, such belief, such faith that a miracle will happen. Because miracles do happen, and you're hoping to be that 1 in a million story that is, those guys, they actually, almost at the end of it all, the mother survived, so it's really ultimately hope, I remember even with my brother's illness with the cancer, we had been at it for so long, maybe almost a year and a half, and like you said, cried, fasted, done everything, gone to everywhere, gone to India twice, come back, everything. You've tried everything you can. You've depleted all your financials at this point. And that's what it does to your family as well. I remember he died on a Thursday. That Monday, I woke up and I said, "Dear Lord, I am done crying. I am not going to cry anymore.
Okay.
I'm not going to pray anymore. At this point, you, whatever you want, may your will be done."
Okay.
3 days later, his will was done. Because I think also, because I'm a believer, there's a place where there's a tussle between you and God of letting go, letting this person go, and we all belong to Him ultimately. So the minute I think I surrendered him to God and said, it's up to you now. Whatever it is that you want, I will accept. And he went home to be with the Lord. So what it does to me and what all these different losses have done to me, I think psychologists or psychiatrists, I mean therapists will call it cumulative loss, one after the other. It does something to you because there's a lot of first questioning yourself, questioning why me, why only us, why is death always knocking on our door, why can't it go somewhere else? Physically, it will, again, like Josephine alluded to, it will deplete your energies, your morale, so that affects how you show up everywhere, in every aspect of your life. It affects how you show up as a mother, as a wife, as an employee, as a friend. It affects everything. So people then begin to say, she's isolated, or your spouse, especially, say for example, and I've seen this also, you're the one who's lost a parent and you're married, your spouse has both parents, so he doesn't really understand what you're going through, and then you're lashing out at him and almost even saying, but you have your parents, me, I've lost my mother, so you cannot understand. Also, again, we are not taught how to support people who are grieving, so you also don't know how to show up for your friends. So it's a very, very weird world or messed up world we're living in, but I guess with the work that either I am doing, the work that Josephine does, continuing to teach people, continuing to create a lot of awareness around how can we, for us at Grief Angels, we want to demystify grief. Grief should not be this thing that we don't understand, because ultimately we know death is coming. So what comes after death is grief. So why are we unaware about grief? We want to normalize grieving, so that when you see somebody and you know they've gone through this traumatic loss of losing somebody they loved, you can identify and see that that's grief, and you can be able to support them, give them time. I've seen people lose their jobs because of grief, because you showed up differently. You were the star of the team, but then you went through this, but now you're not able to even motivate yourself to even send an email. But people,
or even show up.
And then I guess the other point I want to say about the emotions and the reactions. Starting out the support groups, two that are running, parental loss and sibling loss. Because yes, at least I am affected by those, so I am able to understand them. I know there are more that run, like spousal loss or even child loss. But what I've seen come out of those two groups is, with this parental loss, one of the biggest emotions that people struggle with is fear, followed by anger. Not so much guilt, it's fear of moving forward with your life without the person who brought you into it, without the person who has held your hand all through, the person you check with for anything, for any decisions. So that fear of navigating life without that person is the biggest one. On this other side of sibling loss, what I've seen is one of the biggest emotional reactions to that kind of a loss is guilt. Guilt because first we were born together, like we're like 2 years apart, 3 years apart. Why have you died? Why have I been left? Guilt because maybe we fought. I could have done something differently, because you don't necessarily fight with your parents as much as you fight with your siblings. Guilt because I could have done something. I could have helped you. So there's a lot of guilt also within and then anger. So anger towards God. Anger towards the doctors who could have done better. Anger towards the driver who didn't drive. So there's a lot of different emotional reactions, but they're all very normal.
I see that. And so the first three, because I'm just going to go back to, you also lost your other brother, right? So first of all, were you able to deal with this first three deaths, right? Were you able to deal with your emotions? Were you able to grieve? Because what I've also seen is some people tend to sort of like postpone, because you have to be strong, and especially this happens a lot with the men, where they're told now, sasa wewe ndio mwanaume wa nyumba, so you're not supposed to grieve, you're not supposed to show your emotions, you're not, because you need to be strong for everybody else. So I wonder, were you able to grieve?
I can't speak much about my dad, also because I was very young.
Yeah.
13 is not very, very young, but I was
but
also
still,
as a teenager doing teenage things
Yeah.
In school. So my dad and my brother, being in high school and campus and being busy with school helped a lot, because then it's a good distraction. And I was able to find a way to cope. And I keep telling people, you need to give your grief a form of expression.
Okay.
And if you don't give it a form of expression, grief will always find something. So if you don't give it a healthy way of expressing itself, whether it's through hiking or journaling or some creative thing that you're doing, or just something that you're doing that is a good form of expressing all that energy you have, grief will attach itself to isolation, to alcoholism, to just all the other unhealthy habits. It will always take something, the sleeping pills, it will always take something to attach itself to. With my mother, now as an older woman, is when I began to work and want to write about it. So then I realized writing and talking about it, starting on Facebook, talking about it, blogging, seeing people's reaction to my blogs. They loved it, they wanted more, they wanted me to speak about it more. That gave me a coping mechanism for myself, because I realized actually putting my thoughts and my emotions and my pain on paper and for other people to read is what helped me, ultimately leading to even starting now the podcast, where we are having those difficult conversations. Conversations like things not to say to somebody who's grieving, because again, we don't know. We're not told. People just say the wrong thing. Someone just says, don't worry, it shall be well, it is well. And you're like, how is it well?
You've lost.
I've lost the one person I love the most. How is it well? Make it make sense. Or everything happens for a reason. And I'm like, what reason? And you don't know, but you just said everything happens for a reason.
Exactly. So okay. All right. And for the death of your...
So for my brother, that happened this year, and
sorry, really?
and I think now that I think about it, and I've also gone through a lot of therapy with that. And again, the guilt of what I should have done with him, or I could have done with him as a sibling, is to help him go through therapy or get some form of help, because he also lost a lot of these people, right? So we've lost the same people. So how I handled my grief and how he handled his grief is very different. And you can see the effects of it, because he didn't handle it very well, and then that also continued to affect him. And eventually he succumbed to, I guess, the mental issues that came with just losing a lot of people. He was the firstborn, so he's like, I've lost my dad, I've lost my mom, lost a younger brother, you should protect the family, should do all this. And you're like, I think there was a lot of pressure on him that even we probably placed on him without knowing, because he also didn't know any better. Could I go back and do things differently? Definitely, because then again, guilt carries. But today, am I in mourning? Obviously, am I grieving? I will always be grieving all these people. I am grieving my brother more today, the one who just died this year. But because it's just very recent, right? And I have had time to process all the other griefs, all the other losses that have come my way. But with him, I know, because of going through those other ones, I know that even with this one, I will come out of it okay. I'll be okay. Maybe I'm not okay today, but I will be okay.
Absolutely. I mean, the fact that you're here today to speak about it, you know, shows strength. And like what you said earlier on, it's 1 second at a time. One second at a time. There are good days, there are bad days, but 1 second at a time. I hear that. Josephine, we're always told, you know, there are 5 steps to 5 stages, rather, as far as grief is concerned. And we all know it, right? Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally getting to acceptance. But does it always follow that process? Does it always, you know, follow the denial part, and then you come to anger, and then you come to bargaining, and then depression, and then does it always follow that cycle?
The stages of grief. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross gave those stages, and although she was referring to terminally ill patients for themselves when they are going through it, we can still pick quite a number of them, and because we see them manifesting as
in different ways.
Ross says they manifest in grief, but not in any order. Not in any order. Sometimes you may be feeling. By the way, grief are never in denial, because it's a fact. You can't deny a fact. So you cannot say you first of all go into denial. No, but there is this feeling of disbelief. You can't it's not real, it's not happening. That is not denied, just a feeling of disbelief. And then when it comes to anger, they get angry, yes. Bargaining, we bargain. When you are going through grief, sometimes you may find somebody telling yourself, after all, they were suffering a lot, so just maybe it's good that they rested. Although with a bit of guilt, feeling you don't want to say it's good that they died, but maybe it was just as well they rested. So that's the kind of bargaining. Depression, initially people don't get depressed, but whatever they mean by depression, because it's normal to feel low. After loss, you have low moods, and low moods doesn't mean you are depressed. It's just a normal reaction to loss, whatever kind of loss it is. So a lot of people get low moods, but then when these low moods persist for long periods, over maybe a year or so, then it may develop into depression.
All right.
And that's why I was saying we need to be careful when we are dealing with grievers, because sometimes we may take them to see a psychiatrist when it is not really a psychiatric problem. And therefore, the first action is, as Rose says, and Rose, I really feel for you, is to join a support group. You are doing a fantastic job. Joining people who have gone through it. Although the experience may be different because it can never be the same. But at least they understand you when you talk, because they need a safe environment where they can express their deep feelings of loss. Allow them to join those support groups and let them cry. Let them cry it out. Let them talk about it. Journaling is a very helpful thing. Just journaling your feelings. And more so, processing. Part of processing is looking at a relationship with that particular person, because every loss has to be processed separate, at its own time. Because sometimes we get like your Rose is overwhelmed with the loss of so many people, and she may not be able to process them all together. So one needs to look at every relationship separately and process. How do you process? You start with when you first met that person, or when you can remember, and then go through the lives, the life that you have lived together, the good times and the bad times, the good times and the bad, the things that they did for you that hurt you. Yes, don't overlook, because sometimes when someone dies, they are saints.
Yes, and
that is what they are saints. You don't know, you dare not say anything. You dare not even imagine that they did anything wrong. But really, they are just human beings like us. Yes, they made mistakes, they hurt you, they made you happy. So capturing those moments during that relationship as you process, that helps a lot to have a balanced view. And when you balance your view now, or your memory of that person, then you start aligning your emotions. Because grief is caused by misalignment in your emotions. So that you are able to remember good times, and when you remember good times, laugh and smile and be grateful. Then when they hurt you, say, you hurt me so much, but I forgive you. Forgive. Remember to forgive. Although they are not there, but we forgive for ourselves. We say forgiveness is setting the captive free, only to realize you were the captive. So if they had hurt you, because a lot of people are left with emotions they don't know what to do with. This person hurt me so much, so they block it. Because he's dead, you don't want to imagine. So tell them, you hurt me so much during this time, but I forgive you. So, and then at the end of it, up to the point where they left you, when you look at your life with that person, you find now you can remember them without necessarily feeling a lot of pain. In fact, you will find that even in separation and divorce, it's like we want to make the other person look really bad. We don't want to remember that there was a time that they proposed.
Yes.
How did you feel? So when you look at it that way, then you find that you are balancing your emotions and aligning them.
Yeah. And you see, the reason why I asked, if again, all grief, like we all go through all those stages, is because it's very easy for someone to question, am I really grieving? Because I am not angry, you know, I am not depressed, I am not in disbelief, like I said, not denial, disbelief, you know. So if someone does not go through any of these, the questioning whether they're grieving or not, but again, it doesn't necessarily have to follow those exact stages. And Rose, you mentioned something very important, and that is sometimes people don't know what to say. Sometimes people don't know what to do, and other people would stay away because what do I say? What do I do? So what is that like? What is it that people can do to support someone who is grieving without necessarily saying things they're not supposed to say or doing things that they're not supposed to do? So what is support look like?
It's a really good question. I think a lot of people should ask themselves every time you hear somebody has lost someone and that person is close to your friend, your cousin, whatever it is. I think for me, ask yourself, what can I do for them without them asking? Because what you see with a lot of us is, I hear about it, I will probably not call you. Also, please do not call people on the first day when it happens. That first day, just don't call anybody. They're literally going through so much shock that the phone is the last thing on their minds today. So you're in shock. You've heard about the death of my mother. It has shocked you, but imagine what it has done to me. So don't call me. But text me. I will see. Eventually, I will find my phone. I will see the text. So send a nice message. I see people say, "Let me know how I can help." I don't know how.
You don't know at that time.
I don't know how you can help me. Even I don't know what I need right now. So I push it. I push back to the person and say, you think ahead and decide what does Rose need. Rose has a child who is in school. Maybe she might need to be picked up for a sleepover. Maybe she might need some help with preparing food the whole of that week. You know, so help me with things that I will be like, oh yeah, when this happened, Winnie gave me food that entire week for dinner, and then she was in my house. She was present. She was receiving my visitors. Just think ahead. Don't. I keep saying, let me know how I can help you. Is a lazy way of showing up for your friend. Because you put the responsibility on them to think,
to tell you how.
And people who are isolating, don't want to talk to the world, want to cut off from the world, will never call you to say, could you help me with my rent this month? No, they'll never do that. They will struggle and suffer with it.
You know, I can't find my way to the shower. I do not have that.
I don't know how to.
So I can't.
So just know that their world has shattered. Go to them. You don't have to say. You can even say, I don't know what to say, but I'm here for you and I'm here to help you. I will, everything in the house, I will do it for you. Ask them, I've already done this, I've already cooked for you, do you want me to drive you somewhere? Do you need to do some, succession is also quite a long process. Do you want me to drive you to the courts? Do you want me to drive, just think about what they might need. You yourself, when you do your things in your house and you're doing them yourself, that person's not able to do them. So all those things that you do for yourself, go and do for them.
I see that. And
then just be present. I see also people will be very present that first week leading up to, first 2 weeks before the funeral, then after the funeral people disappear.
I was about to ask that. And people will tell you, I will be here for you, I will walk the journey with you, and then a few weeks later, you don't see no one.
And you're left wondering, how has life moved on? How have people just gone back to their everyday life and mine has been completely broken? So I also keep challenging people with, even if you have to set a reminder on your phone, the anniversary of this death for whoever it was will be a very painful day for this person. So put a reminder, just tell them, I am checking. In fact, it's so bad because you say, if your brother died on 27th of February, 27th of March, I will think about it. I may not think about it 24th of March, but 27th March, I'll think about it. 27th, every 27th, all the way up to the first year, I will think about all those 27th because it was just a reminder in my mind. So if you can, put a reminder, text them, send them a nice message. If you find a nice grief quote or a nice song or a nice verse, grievers need spaces to talk about people. That's why the support groups exist. But also, don't think you're making me uncomfortable by asking me about my mom. I actually want to talk about my mom, but I don't know who to talk to about, but ask me. You know? I want to tell you about the kind of beautiful woman she was.
I see that. I see that. I see that. Because, sometimes it can be, again, uncomfortable to this person who has not experienced that loss. So they're like, what if I ask and
it triggers something.
Okay, no, but I hear that. I hear that. Because there are good times, like Josephine mentioned, that you'd want to talk about.
Exactly.
About your mom, about your dad, about your brothers as well. And Josephine, we'll also have this, I don't say type of people, but sometimes some people tend to postpone grief. Some people tend to sort of like, repress or suppress all this, because I have a lot of things to handle. I have kids, I have family, I have to maybe go to court, I have to speak to, so they tend to put that aside and move on with their lives. Is there a danger to that? And do they know that they are actually, suppressing all these emotions?
A lot of times people don't know what they are doing to themselves. Because we are taught to be strong and not to and sometimes you are put in a position where you don't even have time to grieve, even to think of, because there are immediate needs that need to be attended to. Like, let's say you are a young mother, you have children who need to be fed, washed, taken to school, and then if you have lost your husband, you are now becoming the bread earner, they want to pay. So sometimes, even without thinking about it, we may put off thinking about it, or even grieving. And then the other thing is the society, which tells us to move on, to, life goes on, that you have to be strong, that you have to keep busy so that you don't think about it. Keeping busy is one of the unhealthy things to tell somebody who is going through grief, because keeping busy makes you kind of shelve that grief, and it keeps it will manifest eventually. It manifests in your performance. It manifests. Have you seen people who are always going for funerals, or even for people they don't know? Because they are stuck there. They have never thought beyond the funeral. The last thing they thought about death was when they buried that person, and then they forgot about it. Then when they go to this funeral, you find them crying, even sometimes louder than the
family.
Yes, it's because they have never taken time to process that grief. And these are opportunities now for them to process slowly. But the best thing, as Rose says, is to join. Because after the funeral, people tend to forget you, as you have said, and they think you are okay. And after 1 year, when they meet you and find that you are still looking very sad, they go, hey, you have grieved for too long. It's because they have never really processed the grief. And so joining a support group at that point is a very healthy thing, or a friend or somebody who can work with you. And as far as the support group is concerned, then they have to be people, first of all, who know what they are doing, because this is a deliberate thing. You want to be intentional on overcoming or getting through it. Because when you say you have recovered, you don't recover by just dressing well and looking nice and laughing, and because it's like what we call Academy Award recovery, where everything has to look, you put yourself together, and hey, you're smiling, and everyone thinks you have recovered. But then when you go to your chamber, tears are falling like rain. So to avoid that scenario where you portray a picture of having recovered, you need to just be intentional and go through the steps. Time itself does not heal, although we are told that time heals all wounds. Time does not heal. What heals is what you do within that time. There are people who recover faster because they're intentional, and they go for counseling, they join group, they talk about it, they process. And when they remember, how do you know you have recovered? By the way, you have recovered when you remember that person. You don't feel that pain. When you don't feel that pain, that persistent pain, when you can freely talk about and remember happy moments and also sad moments. When you are free in your mind to think about the person as they were, without necessarily feeling a lot of pain in your heart.
And there's no specific time for that. It's
to
different, right? So there's no timeline to the same. Okay. So I can see your time is far much spent. But Rose, I'm just going to ask. So yes, you run a support group. I don't want to say you're in a good place right now because, like you said, 1 second at a time, right? So I was just going to ask, how are you now? And how did you find that strength to move forward without necessarily feeling guilty that, why am I still alive and yet I've lost people that I loved the most? Why am I happy and yet I've lost, right, the people that I love the most? So how are you and how are you doing?
I am okay today.
Okay.
I have heavy grief days.
Yeah.
I have light grief days sometimes.
Yeah.
Like Josephine said, when the memory of that person brings a smile to your face, that's when you know you have
recovered.
You're on your way to healing.
Okay.
Because when I think about my brother who died in 2011, and I think about my brother who died this year, with 2011, Mwai, there's a lot of fondness. There's a lot of, we used to do this, we used to do this. With my brother, Washira, who died this year, there's a lot of pain, a lot of hurt there. So for me, it's accepting each as is and not expecting this one to be like this one, because there also has been time.
Yeah.
And rightfully so, like Josephine said, the only way to healing is by dealing. So if you do not deal with it, if you run away from it, you're not going to get healing. There's no timeline to grief. I have accepted that. I've accepted the days where I cannot do anything, and I accept that today I'm going to sit with my anger and begin to ask myself, why am I angry? Who am I angry? So that's dealing. I accept the days that I feel happiness, and I'm like, it's a joyful moment. I am at a wedding. I wish my mother was at this wedding, but she isn't. But I will not allow that to hamper my mood of the day and be happy for the person who's getting married. And I see it a lot even with people who, you've lost a child and then you have to go for a baby shower. I keep saying, do not put yourself in situations where you will get triggered. You have the right to say, I'm not able to attend this. You have the right to say no. Don't overextend yourself and people please. Give yourself time. And sometimes giving yourself time is choosing yourself and choosing even rest. I choose to just rest. So I do that a lot.
I was about to ask, so then what do you do? Because you run a support group, you run a podcast. So what do you do in those days where you're not okay, right? And there are these people who are looking up to you, but you are not okay.
I tell guys, when I show up at the parental loss support group, I'm a very different person because I've also had time to deal with the loss of my parents.
Of your parents, When
I show up at the sibling loss support group, even when you're going through the different, we do a couple of exercises to help with the different, maybe write a letter to the person who died. I can't. I'm like, this exercise, I won't do it. I'm not going to write a letter to Washira. I'll try and write 2 sentences. But I've written a whole letter to Mwai. But to Washira, I can't because I'm not yet there. But with time, I will get there. So I tell guys today, give me grace. And I keep telling people, extend grace to yourself. Extend self-compassion. Be kind to yourself. Like all those things that you're telling yourself in your head about why are you like this, you're beating yourself up in your head. Would you tell that to somebody who's grieving? No. So why are you telling them to yourself? So extend a lot of patience, kindness, and grief and grace to yourself. For those days when you think you're not showing up the way you should. If you have a good boss and a good manager, talk to them, let them know. Let them know how they can support you. Ask for time if you need time. If you have people who can help you with the kids, if you have people who can help you with the business or whatever it is, ask for help also.
Yeah, I see that. All right. And Josephine, so for those people who say, I'm not going to show up because I don't know what to say. All right? I'm not going to show up because... And sometimes one would say, yeah, I mean, I understand you'd rather not show up instead of showing up and saying the wrong things, or instead of showing up and doing the wrong things, right? What is it that you would say? I know Rose alluded to, you know, some of those things, what we should do. But yeah, for those people who say, or some people would say, but that is a trigger because probably I also lost someone who's very dear to me. So showing up might trigger me and I will end up not offering enough support to this person who needs it at that time. What would you say?
During the funeral?
Or even the process after the funeral, you know, when this person really needs someone to be there for them.
Yeah, first of all, it's good to, as Rose says, to take care of yourself. And sometimes you don't feel like doing it, and it's okay, because when you are not happy, how are you going to make other people happy?
True.
Yeah, you are of not much good to a grieving person. If you yourself, you know, you are grieving, and therefore, it's good to feel not okay. It's okay not to feel okay, and accept. And also, she talked about, Rose talked about taking care of yourself, self-care. During this time, self-care is very important. A lot of people tend to neglect themselves, neglect their whatever they do, their children. You have to take care of yourself. Eat well. You sleep. Eat healthy food. Sleep. Dress well. Take care of your normal hygiene and everything. And that boosts your energy. When you feel you are okay, you are in charge and taking care of yourself, you've got more confidence.
To show up for the person that who needs it the most. All right, allow us to say goodbye on that note. I know there's so much that we need to discuss, so much to go through, but time is not on our side. But I'm not gonna say, let's put a stop, let's put a pause over there. Let's put a pause over there on today's conversation, because both of you said very important points that I'd want us to, you know, think about even as we go throughout our day and even days to come. But for now, Rose Gichere, founder and host, Grief Angels podcast. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time today, Rose. And Josephine Kiluta, grief recovery specialist and counselor as well. Thank you so much. Thank you to both of you for really, really helping us understand grief and how we can support one another, all right? Whether you're grieving or you're not, support is very important. So goodbye for now. Have yourselves a lovely day ahead. I will see you tomorrow morning, same time, same place, right here on Your World. But until then, stay safe and God bless. See you soon.